Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today is story time. There is a comic series that I grew up with as a child. I think a lot of Americans don't know about this particular one. Most of my audience on this podcast is from America. I think it's America first. Then I know that's a slogan. That's not what I meant. It's America first, then Canada, then the UK, then Australia, then Mexico, and then a lot of other countries. So a lot of people don't know this particular series. So let me start reading the opening that was in the inside of every single comic book. And then some of you may be like, I know what the story is. So it always started with, the year is 50 BC. Gaul is entirely occupied by the Romans. Well, not entirely. One small village of indomitable Gauls holds out against the invaders, and life is not easy for the Roman legionnaires who garrison the fortified camps of Tatorum, Aquarium, Laudanum, and Compendium. You guys guess it? Yeah, Asterix. Asterix and Obelix. So I grew up with Asterix and Obelix. I was obsessed. I would always get my parents to get me the newest, book that came out. And there were amazing characters. I mean, those of you that know, there was Asterix and Obelix, of course. I'll talk about them in a second. There was Getafix the Druid, Dogmatix the little dog. And the comic series was created by two French gentlemen called Goscinny and Uderzo. I think it's René Goscinny and Albert Uderzo. So just to set it up, this is going to be about much more than just the story, by the way, but just let me set it up. So Getafix had created, because the Gauls had the ability to have superhuman strength against the Romans. And the way it worked is that the Druids had created something called the magic potion. And every time the Gauls took the magic potion before they fought the Romans, they would just decimate the Romans. Now, Obelix, who was this very, very, very fat man, I know you're not supposed to say fat, but whatever, fell in a pot of magic potion when he was a child. So he has superhuman strength for life. Asterix, who's this little guy, who's a fierce warrior, but very little, has to take a little shot of the magic potion before he goes to fight. Getafix, of course, is the druid, and then the Dogmatix was the cute dog. There's a lot of different characters. Now, what was so cute, I remember, not far from where I am is this little town. It's not that little, actually. It's called Sintra. It's just outside of Lisbon. And there are these incredible palaces and castles on top of this hill. It's this weird little microclimate of a place. And when I was a kid, I used to go up there. And I remember one day my dad was looking over the castle walls with me down into the forest. And he said to me, that's where Asterix and Obelix had their battles. And of course, I was a kid and I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. And I went up there a year ago again to go check out the same wall where I hung out with my dad. My dad has passed away, by the way. It's been many years. And I actually went to try to find the exact spot where he and I stood that a photograph was taken. And I remembered just the childlike mind that I had and the belief that I had that this was the actual forest where Asterix and Obelix were hanging out. Now, the truth was, the story actually takes place in France, in the northwest corner of France. But it was a very cute belief I had as a kid, and I can tell you that I was obsessed with this comic book. Now, the Gauls were like the underdogs. The Romans were the Romans, out to conquer the world. And the Gauls had no fear of anything because they had the magic potion. But they did have one fear. And the one fear was that the sky would fall. And so a whole bunch of books had in it, whenever something happened that was out of the ordinary, everybody would run around screaming and saying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And this was a belief system that the Gauls had, that the sky was falling. I don't know if this is real. I don't know if the Gauls really felt the sky was falling. I have no idea. There were lots of gods and lots of whatever, so who knows? So that's the scenario of that story, 50 BC. So I want you to take that scenario and imagine if we could take... Oh, and by the way, the one great thing about these comic books is that the author and the artist would mirror things that were happening in society in modern day, using the archetypes of these characters from, thousands of years ago. So let me try and use this story as a mirror for some things. Okay, so imagine, a scenario that's somewhat similar. Maybe it's 50 BC or a future, unspecified time. But let's say that there's been this fear of the sky falling for a long, long time. I mean, maybe it's been centuries. And somebody in the village comes up with what seems like a brilliant solution. And the solution is that they're going to create these special helmets that repel the sky, because there's this constant fear, and everyone's lived with this fear of the sky falling, that they're going to create helmets that actually repel the sky. Now, I know some people who are very, very linear are going to say, well, haven't they figured out the sky can't fall? I mean, haven't they studied it? And I guess I would say, well, first I would say, let's imagine they haven't, because in the story they haven't. But it is possible that there are beliefs that we have about the world that we haven't really tested very well, and we believe them and they go on from generation to generation. Is it possible that, even in our modern day, we hold beliefs that are so accepted that nobody even asks questions? And I really want you to stretch and think, all the things I believe, have I seen the evidence firsthand? Do I absolutely know it's true? Am I absolutely certain? It's an uncomfortable place to get to, but one that any real good scientist would entertain the idea. How do I know that this thing I believe is true about this experiment I'm about to do? Or this thought I'm about to have, I should say. So yeah, just try that on. Okay, back to the helmets. So at the beginning of this crazy helmet idea, people would say things like, well, why can't we just put like some special metal on the roofs? And then the person who was coming up with the helmet idea was saying, well, that's not how it works. And honestly, like, I figured this out. And so the solution was this for this terrible threat of the sky falling, that everybody had to wear this special helmet. And this guy began, creating, helmets in bulk. He was maybe a metalsmith and a druid, who knows, whatever would help the story. Everyone has to wear the helmet, even the children. And the reason everybody has to is because if any one person doesn't, somehow the fabric of energy or whatever could be weak and the sky could actually fall. So far, so good, right? I know it sounds bizarre, but it's a metaphor for the beliefs we have. How many groups can you think of that hold beliefs that seem completely illogical to outsiders? There might be groups that you can think of, not you, of course, but there might be other groups that you can think of that hold these beliefs. Now, if you're in one of these groups and you have a person that doesn't believe and you're very fervent, the trick is to deal with the outsider, or to deal with the person who has an errant thought in some special way, usually some forceful way. Okay, we'll get back to that. Okay, so fast forward, helmet factories are being built. It's a huge business now, and now all of the town folks of this village are now involved in making the helmets, in working in the factories, and now they're selling it to other towns as well. And this is how everybody's beginning to make ends meet, and they're making good money. But there are just these few irritating people that keep asking questions about the helmets. They're worried that the helmets, might be hurting people. And the reason they're worried is because everybody has to wear these helmets all the time. They can't take them off. And some people are developing like sores under their helmets on their head. And some people are having damage, to their head from how tight the fit is, because nobody's ever allowed to take them off. And the thing is that every single time they say something, they get pushback. When the outliers, when the people that are not quite on board say something or ask a question, they get pushback. They get pushback from the factory owner, the guy who came up with the idea. They get pushback from the town crier. And the answer is always, well, it's the sky that's causing all these problems. It's the pressure from the sky, the invisible pressure that is creating these problems on people's head. And the general feeling is that the people that are asking questions are just insane because they don't seem to understand. It's so obvious that the sky is going to fall, and the way we can prevent it is not and we're not wearing the helmet to not get damage on our head if it falls. We're literally wearing the helmet to push the sky up. All of us together wearing the helmet will push the sky up. And these people that are asking these questions are kind of insane. And the people that are asking questions, are you sure the sky is falling? And are you sure that these helmets are good for us? And anytime they say that, they're ridiculed, by the townsfolk. Because the thing is, we're doing this together. We're doing this, as a community to save the community. And the townsfolk would say things like, oh, so you're like anti-people, and the answer is like, no, I'm not an anti-people person. I'm just asking. Oh, so you think you're a metalsmith or a druid? No, I'm not. Okay, well then you don't know. And then they say, well, I don't have to be a druid to ask questions. And the answers are, yes, you do. Oh, so you're anti-helmet? No, I'm not anti-helmet. I'm just asking questions. And eventually what happens is these few people, and it is only a few, get called, names like, anti-human, anti-helmet, like a skydenier. And they're asking questions about like the factory, and is what we're doing really good? And the outliers can see that everybody's very, very caught up. And they're not saying it's bad. They're not saying, definitively that the helmets are hurting people. They're not even, trying to point out any kind of, bad intent. They're just saying, like, is this the right course of action? Is this the right thing to do? But at this point, everybody is so invested in the fear of the sky falling and the helmets that they've now been wearing for years, and the factory that's providing the jobs, that anybody that says anything becomes, socially destroyed. And the other thing, just to go back, when I say socially destroyed, I mean, there's this sort of mob mentality that's developed that the people that ask questions are made fun of, and the town crier will start to ridicule, go into the middle of town and start to ridicule anybody who just doesn't go along with, what is so obvious. It is so obvious that we are battling the falling sky. And then the other thing that makes this so challenging for this community, well, not for most of the community are on board, but for the outliers, is that and this is something that's important. If you listen to the previous podcast episode I did, using fear to control people, it's an interesting episode to listen to. Maybe listen to it before you continue, if you want to, or if you can stick with story time. People felt united against the fear of the falling sky because they had a solution. They were given a solution, and they feel a bond. They feel a kinship, and they feel a safety. And so what happens to them is that anybody who questions what they're doing or casts doubt on what they're doing, it makes them feel a certain level of insecurity. They're not aware of it, but it makes them feel a certain level of insecurity because they were given a solution. And so anybody who questions the helmets, who questions the factory, who questions what the chieftain, or the ruling party, whatever metaphor you want, is saying, is seen as somebody that's trying to instill fear back. And again, this is not conscious. It's very, very unconscious. But they feel unified in this solution and this thing that they're going to do, and they feel justified to go after the detractors because they're bonded, and the detractors are trying to break the bond. And so, like a mob, they begin to go after the detractors, calling them these names like the anti-helmets or the whatever. And also, by the way, there's this painting in the chieftain's, lodge, of a beautiful painting of a disaster that happened some unspecified, time ago, where you can see a village that is being destroyed by a falling sky, and people are screaming and running and dying, and it's just horrific. That's in the background, and in the front of the painting is the chieftain and the druid and the factory owner. And it's sort of like one of those amazing sort of like communist era posters where there's this glow behind them, and the factory owner and the druid and the chieftain are holding up the helmet, which is the salvation. So I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful painting. And of course, that's further proof that the sky is falling is a real problem, because look, I mean, it happened. God forbid that you should ask a question about like who painted it and how do we know that happened. You don't do that in this society. So while all this is happening, this happens over years, by the way, some of the outliers find out, and there's only a few of them because they've been relegated to a corner of the village. Nobody wants to talk to them. They're being shunned. But they find out that the town crier, who comes into town every day and stands in the middle and yells the news, they find out that he's actually being paid by the factory boss to obviously, pump up the helmets, but also make fun of the anti-helmet people. And of course, the anti-helmet people keep saying, we're not anti-helmet people. We're just pro-questioning. But it's kind of too late. They've been cast that way. And they find this out. And so when they approach the chief and they say, the factory boss is paying the town crier to to promote this thing and to make fun of us, it becomes too much for the council, for the chieftain and the council. And the questioning gets so bad that this local little government of chieftains decides they need to punish these people. Maybe what they need to do is they need to, I don't know, figure out a way to put them in prison or banish them or something. So they declare a law, and they say that, speaking out against the helmets, anybody who speaks out against the helmets, anybody who speaks out against the factories, anybody who speaks out against the established science, they didn't use the word science, but you understand the metaphor, established science, and the established science being that at any moment the sky could be falling on us, that anybody who questions those things will be called a criminal and they will be punished. Now, the logical people, and by logical I mean the people that are so linear that they are not good pattern recognizers. Because I am obsessed, as you guys probably know, with two things. The one thing I'm obsessed, well, many things, but one of the things I'm obsessed with is pattern recognition, because I think it's so important. I think that if people used more pattern recognition, they could recognize more of what's going on, in society, in their lives, that kind of thing. And that's why, for instance, with narcissism and psychopathy, I think that if people can understand the pattern, they can then more easily apply it to their life and to people they're dealing with that they feel mystified by. The other thing I'm obsessed with, there's more than two, by the way, but let me just talk about these two. The other thing I'm obsessed with is having people imagine that they might be caught in an ideology and they don't have the full picture. I'm obsessed with this idea. And why am I obsessed with this idea? Because that was what happened to me in Nixium. I was inside a mindset, not just inside a cult, inside a mindset. And I believed so sincerely that we had all the answers and could see the world very, very clearly. And so, in 2017, it was a massive shock to my system to realize that my beliefs were literally upside down and inside out, that I'd gotten things really fucking wrong. And so I'm obsessed with trying to talk to people about what if each of us is in somewhat of a similar position, we just don't know it. See, as I said, the very, very logical people that are listening to me rambling on and saying these things, they'll say things like, but the villagers are just stupid. I mean, nobody would believe that. Yeah, really? Are you sure? I mean, I think the problem is we keep on imagining in our hubris that we are the intelligent people. I mean, has anything that you can think of that people once believed been proven untrue? And some people say, yes, but that's only way back in the day. Like that's like centuries ago. Now everything's, been proven. I'm like, yeah, no, you got to read more than just the whatever news you're reading, because there's a lot of things that have been proved to be incorrect. So I'm always trying to have people try on the idea that we might be caught in a trap, not just the stupid others. And the problem, of course, is because we have these ego structures that so desperately need to be right, it's hard for us to imagine. These people that counter this idea will say things like, look, Mark, I appreciate what you're saying. I really do. But your message that you're giving is only for the stupid people, not for the smart people. Yeah. So how is it that those stupid Gauls held a belief for so long in the story? I'm not saying they really did. In the story, held a belief for so long that the sky was going to fall, and they came up with a harebrained idea to create these helmets that would repel the sky, that everybody had to wear them, that any issues that may be coming from the helmets weren't coming from the helmets, but coming from the pressure of the sky. How is it that they bought it? And what you have to do then is you have to pull back and say, okay, let me take that pattern, let me apply it to my life and see what are the things I'm holding on to, and who are the people that I'm ridiculing because they're asking questions, because I don't see them as just people asking innocent questions. They are malevolent, hateful people that want to destroy society. As always, my friends, please stay curious.